If you've had trouble getting those trills to sound just right, you're not alone. Luckily, your piano teacher Tim is here to help because today it's how to play trills, mordents, and turns like a pro. So a trill, let's just talk about like how it's written. So it's written TR, how about that? And sometimes there will be like a little squiggly line after it. The note that's written there, that G, that's what we call the principal note. And you're going to see me talk about the principal note quite a lot in this because all of these ornamentations have to do with altering the principal note in some way. So here's the thing, is you have, we're taking a look at the first thing over here with the treble clef. We have a G, which is our what note? Our principal note, that's right. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be alternating, yes, between the principal note and actually the note above it. And specifically, it's the scale note above it. So say we're in the key of C, 0 sharp, 0 flats. Well, the next scale note above G happens to be A. So we're going to be alternating just like they have written down below there. However, through reading this, apparently I realized that there's different ways to do trills, but I was always taught this way. And this is the better way, in my opinion, to do it. It just sounds better. It sounds better more consistently as well, and it doesn't sound as robotic. You want to start from the note above the principal note, not actually the note that's written. And you want to quickly alternate between those two notes. Now, the question is, you may have, Tim, how long do I have to hold out the trill for? Well, as long as your hand can stand it, but specifically for the length of the principal note. So our principal note is how many beats? Hopefully you know this by now. It's 2 beats. So 1, 2, boom. And then you got to get off of it and play notes after that. If the trill was only over an 8th note, you would only have half of a beat to play the trill, which we will here with the example I have to give you here in a second. Now, according to this, some people play the trill starting on the principal note. I do not like that. Like I said, I was always taught to start with the note above it, start on the top note, and then kind of like get into it speed-wise. So it almost like accelerates a little bit. Not in terms of like how many beats it takes up, but instead of going, it's more like this. See, it just has a better flow to it. Now, practice is what you need to master trills, because when you first start doing them, they are going to be really clunky, really either too even or too uneven, and it takes practice. So keep that in mind, please. Now, the one thing I want to tell you about, another question you may have is, Tim, is there a certain fingering to do the trills with? And Sam is not going to like this answer, but the answer is yes, there's a specific fingering that a lot of times you want to do your finger or your trills with. And you want to avoid doing your trills with the upper part of your, well, not the upper part of your hand, the part of your hand towards the pinky, ring finger, and middle. That part of your hand is actually significantly weaker than where your opposable thumb is and this first finger here. That's like a pretty strong one. Whereas these are a little bit weaker, and I'll show you right now. So if I'm playing the trill with 4 and 5, see how it's a real struggle. It's slow. It doesn't sound good. 4 and 3, it's a little better, but it's really not good. And then 3 and 2, I'm going to be honest, 3 and 2 is my favorite. See, I can get a pretty good trill out of 3 and 2. However, my piano teacher always taught me that 1 and 3 is a little bit better. And I'm still getting used to that. I have gotten a lot better at the 1 and 3. But I'm going to tell you a secret. If you can do 1 and 3, perfect. You'll get a really good, strong trill if you're able to get that coordination between that. I actually seem to have better coordination between 3 and 2. See how I can just keep holding it? Whereas with this, it just takes a little bit more to get it out. Let me play you through an example here that I have. This is what, Mozart Sonata number 16, and actually I've never learned this one for real, but I do want to learn it now that I've been playing around with it a little bit. So we have a trill here right on the first line. Where is it? It's on that last measure there. So we have our trill here. The trill, first of all, I have a question for you. What is our principal note of the trill? The principal note happens to be F, right? Top line of the treble clef. But you want to start with the, I call it the upper neighbor, which is the next scale note above. Now, here's the deal, man. We're going to play this measure here. And actually, another question for you is, how long do we have to play this trill? It's not very long. It's whatever the principal note is. So the principal note is only an eighth note. So in the amount of time, so we have our left hand pattern here, which is good because it's a nice even pattern. It kind of helps us keep where the beat is and where those individual eighth notes are. So in the amount of time it takes to play this D, that's how much time you have to play that trill. Because by the time you get to this E here, and you have to hit this G, or by the time you have to hit this last G, so this part, this is the trill note, and then by the time you hit this note, you have to hit E already. You're not allowed, and this is true with all ornamentations, well, except for the one towards the end, you're not allowed, with the ornamentations, you're not allowed to have them mess with the actual like tempo and lining up of the beats. On to the next one, the mordent. Okay, so a mordent is a rapid alternation between the indicated note, also I call it the principal note, as you know, and the note above. Okay, so we actually have two different types of mordents here in this example. So the one over to the left, we're looking at the top here. You see that D and how there's like a little, it has like a little hat. All a mordent is this time you play the principal note instead of the note above the principal note. So note above note. It's like a trill. Like I said, remember the trill, we were playing the note above as well. But you start with the principal note, the note above, and then that note again. It's like a little upper neighbor type of thing. As you can see written right below it, they're showing you, they were nice enough to show you exactly what this is going to do written out. Now I have a question for you. How much time do you have to play that mordent? And it's true with pretty much all of the ornamentations. It's whatever the principal note is. So the principal note is a quarter note. You have one beat to play that. They seem to want to do it quick like that. So not quite eighth note, so the eighth note would be like that. So nice and quick. Now the one next to it, see how there is a written mordent on the C here with the line through it? That is an inverted mordent. So what you're going to do is you're going to play the principal note. Remember mordents, you start on the principal note. You play the note below it back to that note. Now, you have to be careful, again, of your key signature. Saying we have, let's just say, for example, we have no sharps, no flats. So, when we do our mordents, we don't have to worry if there are any sharps or flats with the notes above or below. But say we were in the key of F, and we had this inverted mordent, where we had to go to the principal note, the note below it, and that note. Well, if we have a flat in our key signature, and that note happens to be one of the mordent notes or one of the notes of the ornamentation, that note will be affected by the mordent, that scale note. So be careful of that, and they will tell you. So say you're in the key of F and they want you to do C, B, C. They will actually write a natural sign. Unfortunately, they don't have it written here. So be careful of that. Okay, let's take a look here at an example of some mordents so I can show you what they're all about. So here we have the Minuet in G major by Petzold. So here we have a couple of inverted mordents in the notes we have on here on the top line. You have the amount of time, whatever that principal note is. So when you get to the second principal, or the second inverted mordent, you have a little bit more time to play the mordent, whereas this one, the first one, happens over an eighth note. You gotta watch out for your scale notes as well. Now, if you notice on the first one, actually that was better than what I played through it here just a second ago. It sounded a little bit off, right? So the reason it was a little bit off is that I wasn't getting onto that next note in time. Right? I was playing it a little bit slowed down. Now, what device? There's a device we have. What device do we have? It's this one. That we can make sure that we are playing right on the right beats. It's the metronome. Ding, ding, ding. Hey, I answered it for you. Okay, so here we have our metronome, right? Bum, bum, bum. And remember earlier what I said is that your ornamentation can't mess with the rhythm. So the metronome is good because it lines up where the beats are supposed to go, and then you can correct your mistakes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the metronome. See, it was a little bit out of whack, and I can use it to fix this measure. There, it was better. Let me keep trying it. There we go. And then I would play it in context with the rest of it to make sure that you're lining them up. Really, really, really important that with your ornamentations, you're using one of these. Like I said, it helps you make sure you're playing on the right beats at the right times. Because again, ornamentations are about like adding flourishes and cool things to the music. It's not about changing what's already there. So let's move on to the next whatever point I was going to make. Okay, the next one is the turn, and this one actually gets a lot of people. So a turn works as such. We're actually going to talk about this second example up here at the top, where you have the turn over the D, because that makes it a little bit easier. So you have C, D, E, pretty easy. However, we have a turn over this D, so what should we do? A turn is almost like an inverted, like a mordent and an inverted mordent in one, and here's what I mean. Is that what you're going to do is you're going to start above the principal note, the scale note above the principal note, by the way. So it's kind of like a trill. You play the principal note, the one below the principal note, and then back to that note. So basically you're coming into the principal note and turning around. Hey, it's almost like there's a reason they called it a turn. So again, above the note itself, below, and that note again. Now the question I have for you is how long do we have to play this turn? You have a quarter note, right? Because that's what the principal note is. So it would go like that. And actually they have it written here, right here. They actually wrote it out for you to show you, just like as I played it, just like that. So basically you're putting in 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 notes in the place of that one note. And if you have a quarter note, then they happen to be 16th notes. So like that, pretty easy. Now this first one, and there's a reason we didn't get to this one first, is because this one's the more complicated one, right? The turn is actually after the principal note. So what in the world do we do? So here's the rule, man. You got for those who watch the Mom's House podcast, you got the turn between the C and the D. The turn, well, let me ask you this question, because this will help you like conceptualize it. What note is playing by the time that turn happens? It's that C, right? Because the C, you have a dotted quarter, and then a turn happens. So here's what you do. So you play the C first, and actually they luckily have it written down here. And then you do the turn, and then you have to hit that D 8th note, and then back to the E. So like that. So the difference is that when it's over the principal note, it affects that note, and then when it's after the principal note, it still affects that note, but you play the note first, and then you do the turn. And that's the big... Okay, so this is Pathetique Sonata, Movement 2. We're here on the bottom of the first page, last measure. And we have a turn here. And it's one of those nasty turns that happens between two notes. So the turn here, as you can see over here, we have E, D, and then, oh, sorry, there's a scale note there, or a flat note there. And then you see that there's a turn over there between those next two notes. The question I have for you, two questions, is, actually really just one, is what note does that turn affect? Like what is the principal note of the turn? And the other question I have for you, I guess, is part two to this question, is what note is playing while that turn happens? And the answer is that D. So you hit E, D, and remember, it's this one where you hit the principal note first, and then you do the turn. And you only have, you know, that short amount of time between that 8th note and then the next 16th, dotted 16th note. Like that. So it's going to go. Now let me play it with the left hand. And see how it just kind of added in a little flourish into the melody, which otherwise would have just sounded like this. I'm going to put it the next video that you should watch right here. I'm going to hand select it just for you. It's been your piano teacher, Tim, here, and I'll see you, yes, you, in the next lesson. Have a wonderful day.
Whatever this stuff is, it responds to human emotional states.